Talking about green card interviews, the first question I get a lot is, am I going to receive an interview notice? Am I going to be called an interview for an interview? The answer is maybe. Policy has shifted from administration to administration. Last administration, they're calling in everybody. Now, less. You can be called in randomly for no discernible reason anyway. Or there could be a reason, criminal issues, you have to disclose those in your I-45, make sure you do. Recent marriages, and presently right now, we're seeing that most people aren't called in for an interview. I'm getting emails from happy people saying, no interview for me, my green card's approved.
Yes. Don't worry if you couldn't figure out what's the purpose of why you were called, but look deep and carefully into your case and see if you can project a situation, maybe a recent employment change, a recent marriage, trying to figure it out so you can prepare a little bit better for the interview.
Yeah.
All right, so before the interview, we're gonna break this down to before the interview, during the interview, and what you do after the interview to kind of make it simpler to present. So before the interview, the first question you have to ask is, do I need an attorney? And the answer is, really, it's a choice by you whether you need an attorney present there. Now, when I'm asked, do you need an attorney? Most of the time, I tell people you really don't need an attorney. In few cases, I do say I honestly think you do need an attorney. So on a case-by-case basis, if you have a criminal issue beyond minor traffic violations under $500 and does not involve bodily injury, etc., you're fine. And then your level of personal confidence. If you feel like you need an attorney to feel a little bit stronger and more confident, definitely an attorney can provide that support. What does an attorney do?
Yeah, I think the level of personal confidence is that second bullet point there, that a presence of an attorney can help keep USCIS on their best behavior. That's kind of on the personal confidence.
Yes, and things have changed recently. I go back and remember a while back.
Stories.
Well, I can tell some crazy stories about USCIS's officers getting, crossing the line. That is really happening substantially less nowadays, which is a good thing. But definitely having an attorney is an important issue. Some jurisdictions, by the way, they seat the attorney behind, to the left or to the right of the client.
I was at one of these, in the officer, in the officer's office, and there's a nice big wide space where there's space for a bunch of chairs. And then the attorney, me, gets put behind two monitors, and on the back of the monitor, there's a sign that admonishes the attorney, blah blah blah, something along the lines of, you're not supposed to talk during this thing.
Yes.
Me being me, I definitely did not abide by that sign exactly.
Right, and we shouldn't. But it's not a big deal. We can, if we're in the room, we can help. If help is needed, let's put it that way. We don't have a big ego. We have to sit at a big chair or a comfortable chair. We support you, we help you. The presence of an attorney can help resolve, clarify issues, and keep USCIS on their best behavior, which is really critical.
Yeah. So then there's, before the interview, the big question I get a lot is, what documents do I need to bring? So they send you an interview notice in the mail, and that interview notice is the interview notice, as far as I can tell, they use for everybody. And so there's lots of things in there that may not apply to you, but there's some basics on there that, well, here they are. Interview notice, photo ID, so they know who you are and that you're supposed to be here for an interview. Copy of all your immigration documents is issued to you, I-797s, your H-1B approval notices, your EADs, your advanced paroles, copy of your I-94, birth certificate, marriage certificate, originals. But really, the good rule of thumb is the original of any documents that you submitted in your I-45 filing.
100%. It's very important to get the originals in. And also, if you, for example, just recently got married, then you know that you are pulled for an interview because of that. So bring pictures of your weddings, joint bank accounts, joint credit cards, any other evidence of commingling of life and commingling of assets that can help you in proving that the marriage is bona fide. There's nothing better than a wedding album in a bona fide marriage interview, because the officer loses themselves into looking at the picture and they ask you, what's this guy? Who's this guy? Wow, this is beautiful. Wow, this is colorful. And then the interview temperature goes down a little bit.
See, I like it when you're about, you're about 9-10 months into the marriage. It's better than a photo album, baby.
That's right. Well, yeah, if that's available, or maybe baby on the way.
If you have a baby available too, you can bring that baby. It's quite compelling evidence.
And if there's a shifting of employment issue, then you need to bring evidence like a job offer, paycheck stubs, updated tax returns, and things of that nature.
I mean this list. If you filed your adjustment of status 10 years ago, what you need might vary quite a bit from.
So it's really critical to project what it is that you're called for to prepare for the interview. All right, organizations, right? How to prepare.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So my favorite topic, because when I go to an interview with somebody, I am very obsessed about making sure that I have taken care of everything perfectly. In terms of organization, I say bring with you only what you need, and I love it when people have a nice, one of those accordion envelopes, and they basically have everything organized into nice tabs. So when an officer asks you something, on the chance they do, they can pull it out and hand it to them,
and pull it out and hand it them and an extra copy.
Yeah.
So
yes,
and I've seen that a lot where people say, "Okay, a can I see your birth certificate?" Well, yeah, here's the original, officer, and here's a copy for you, because they hate to go to the copier and
that's specifically what they do. I've had them get up and go.
Yes.
Yeah.
So bring a document and an extra copy to hand to the officer. And also on the pictures front, if you're bringing pictures to show, also print 2 extra pictures to say, I get 2 pictures for the file, wedding pictures, whatever.
Yeah.
They appreciate that.
Yeah, they don't want you. They generally don't want your originals, but they are very happy to take
a couple pictures.
Yeah. So it's dress. I mean, how do you dress? You don't have to put on a full suit, but dress respectfully. It's a professional environment, and ever hear that phrase? Dress for the job that you want. Something along those lines.
I agree.
Sam, what do you bring with you to one of these things in terms of what do you pack?
Oh, I mean, for me, because I'm the kind of guy that gets hungry all the time. So I'll have a couple of energy bars, and just a light jacket and a small briefcase with the file, and maybe a phone. And by the way, speaking of phones, also the policy changes from one office to the other. I mean, I was in the Vegas USCIS on an interview, and your phone is left in the car. They don't want that phone even turned off inside, whereas other places will allow the phone in but turned off, yet other places allow it on mute. So just go early and figure out what the rule, and just be prepared to have it, adjust your contingencies. Yeah.
See, I'm a planner, so what gets me is, plan your trip. I'll do it on Google Maps. I'll go and scout the place out if it's a city I've never been to before. Make sure you know where to park. Here in Columbus, they have a perennial problem where they don't have great parking around the USCIS office. People always end up in the employee parking for the USCIS office, and they get into the office and they ask, "Where'd you park?" And you tell them, and they say, "Go and move your car. You're in employee parking. There's meters out front." So
problems with that. Yes.
Yeah.
I usually, if I go to a new city, and if you are like traveling, you may know your city, but if I'm traveling for a client, I'll arrive an hour before, and figure out the place. I'll walk around it, and then I'll find the nearest coffee shop.
Yeah, I will be. You will. If I'm going to meet somebody in a new city, they will find me loitering in front of the USCIS office with a cup of coffee hours before. Yeah.
Keep your day open. Delays are common.
Yeah.
Good point. All right. So preparation before the interview. So review your file. Most of the interview is devoted to going over the application. Name. They just basically read it off almost. Birth details, address history, employment history, security questions. Have you ever done this? Have you ever done this? Have you ever done that? Updated the record. So they just read the application. That takes about 75% of the.
Yeah, they really just. I mean, they find the copy of the application that you sent to them, and they will take it out, open it up, and ask you the answers to the questions you already answered for.
So as you're preparing for the petition, you need to read this application. Read it as if you're reading it for the first time. And if you spot an issue before the interview, let's assume, my begin employment date is wrong on the G325A, or my date of birth, my dad's date of birth is wrong. How did I not catch this before? What you do is you spot these issues, you write a list of them, and once you're sworn in, because when you sit down and get sworn in, we'll talk about that here in a second, you want to, at the first opportunity, and when they say state your name, my name is Sam Shihab, and by the way, officer, I do have 5 corrections I'd like to make. whenever you're ready.
Yeah, you've turned what is potentially a gotcha issue into a no big deal.
Yeah, and then you just go over the errors and the corrections, and they appreciate it. They make notes of it, and life goes on.
Yeah. So we are into the meat of it now. I'll get into it anyway. At the interview, so some things we already touched upon here. Arrive early, but not too early. They say they don't want you more than 15 minutes before your interview. I've never been told to go away. So the logic we were discussing is essentially be in the area well before you need to be. Be ready, be in your car, be around the corner, and be ready to walk into the office.
Unless it's raining or snowing, I'd walk out, look at the building, figure out the security line. Is this a long security line? Or is this a fast security line, and then just go back to your car, just sit down and relax?
So yeah, it brings us to the next point. The security. I mean, it's like airport security. They will make you take off your belt and your shoes, perhaps. And so don't bring your entire ring collection or what your favorite pocket full of coins, because it's just going to be a burden on you.
Where I find it difficult is the children, having children with you, and now you're carrying a little baby with you, and then you're dealing with feeding the kid. So, create those contingencies and the bags and the extra food and set up where in the car, and just time yourself, arrive and time yourself.
I find the most offices, the security officers are generally really friendly,
Totally, yes.
Yeah, but it's just, be prepared for that. So once you're in there, when you check in, you take that, you bring your ID and you bring your interview notice up to a designated window. The nice officer, again, they're pretty nice, will point you to it. You hand somebody over that interview notice, and you give them your ID, and they'll give you usually some sort of receipt or tell you to sit down somewhere and just wait until your name is called. Now, Sam, tell me about the waiting room at USCIS.
Well, the waiting room changes from USCIS office to USCIS office. I don't want to tell you about the history of it. I'll tell you about right now. So in big cities, the waiting rooms are large. In smaller cities, they're a little bit more small and contained.
I've been the only person in the office in smaller cities, and
And it's kind of weird because, for example, I'll bring. I was talking to a client who I did represent in Boston a few years ago, and they called me today on the matter. And I remember the interview in Boston. The hall was large. There's a lot of people waiting. I mean, I'm going to say maybe 70, 80 people in that room at any given point, with a lot of doors and different officers coming from different doors, calling the names.
Yeah.
And mispronouncing the names most of the time.
Yeah.
I mean, so you want to kind of spot the doors where the names are being called, and just keep an eye on those.
Yeah.
In Columbus, the waiting room is kind of like an L-shaped. So the name could be called around the corner to the left, and then another one from the right, and you just need to be aware of that.
Yeah.
So pay attention. Waiting rooms are often loud, usually multiple officers from multiple doors calling people for interview. You remember, you are in a government facilities. So, I mean, and most people honestly are very respectful, but we're going to mention it anyways. Assume that the government will see every document and item that you have with you, and will hear every conversation you will say in the lobby or outside the lobby.
Yeah.
And in family immigration cases, we know that they do begin observing you as you're sitting before they call you, and they look at you and just take a quick look at
and
you.
I would say that, in terms of if you have a recent marriage and it's employment-based, they kind of treat you like a family-based.
Yeah, because the local office is what they are. I mean, there's a family immigration practice.
Yeah.
That's the officer's main training, and now they're doing employment-based, which is a little bit something they're not comfortable with.
Yeah. So once you're in the office, then you can be called back as a whole family unit, or one adult at a time. The one adult at a time scenario is more likely in the new marriage or a family-based marriage sort of case. And just to give you some perspective, you are going to be called to the personal office of a USCIS officer. You're going to see their family photos on the wall if they're that sort of person. They're going to have their name placard on their desk. It's the office where they do their day-to-day work. You're going to get sworn in under oath. They'll make you stand up. They'll probably take your fingerprint, and you will be recorded, the entire thing, and they will make you swear that everything you say in here is going to be true and accurate to the best of your knowledge. So you are sworn in.
And then they begin by asking you, what's your name?
Yeah.
Right? What's your name? They go through the interview. And if you are with an attorney, they're there to handle issues. What do you talk about during the interview? You have to be careful in how you present your information, be respectful, but be firm. And if you don't know something, say, I don't know. Don't worry about saying, I don't know. So you'll be asked about questions on the Form I-485, the bioinformation, addresses, employment security, and security questions. Keep in mind that the interview is about you, the person. USCIS officer likely won't be interested in the specific of your I-140 filing in general, but it's an open.
Yeah,
it's irrelevant.
Just sort of, yeah, it's relevant, but it sort of piggybacks back on what you're saying. I mean, at the local U.S. field offices, they're mostly used to dealing with family-based immigration. You know, somebody gets married to a foreign national spouse. They're there to evaluate their marriage to see if it's good. They are not experts in I-140 filings, and they're not familiar with the details of your work. I mean, they will probably ask you about your work. What do you do for a living? Because it's there in your I-45 form. They might ask you what it entails. I mean, all the things in the form, but
or they may request an updated.
Oh yeah, they can potentially.
Employer letter as well, which you hopefully have prepared if your employment letter is old, and you just go through the interview. And honestly, in my experience, I have rarely had surprises, although I have had them, but they constitute, I'm going to say, less than 3 or 4% of the interviews we conduct. I mean, we've walked into interviews that we assumed is very benign and simple, and we found out there was a massive issues. But that is not the norm. The norm is if you feel that your case is straightforward and you applied and completed the application correctly, you really don't have much to worry about.
Yeah, it's a relatively pleasant experience. Most people, due to the potential that you're going to have a long day there if they get backed up, which they often do, you know, you take the day off, you have a nice lunch afterwards, and odds are you'll have a good idea as to whether you're eligible for a green card at the end. Which brings us to the next slide. Conveniently.
After the interview, Brian, what do you think?
Well, after the interview, people ask, how do I know if I'm going to get a green card? You can ask the officer before you go. It depends on their personality. Sometimes, how rigid they are. Sometimes they'll say, yes, it looks like a case we can approve. Sometimes they'll say, I can't give you that information at this time because we have to go through yada, 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 etc. But, read the room. If you're dealing with a nice person and you got along with them well, it doesn't hurt to ask ever.
You would know if there's a problem.
Yeah.
If there are questions on a specific issue in which you had difficult time answering and his or her reaction was not positive, you know that there's something that you need to overcome or address. Oftentimes, if there are open issues, they'll hand you a piece of paper, which is a really RFE on the spot, and say, you need to resolve this for me. Yeah.
I find it very fascinating. The first time it happened to me, I watched the creation of an RFE right before me. I watched it born out of a Microsoft Word template. Here's an RFE, sir. And like any other USCIS process, you can track these things online. They will eventually, update the status to say your cases have been approved and, your card's in production, and sooner or later you get that green card in the mail. Well, Sam, you walk out of the interview, you realize you didn't anticipate a problem, and you realize that didn't go as smoothly as I thought. What do you do?
Well, if you had your attorney with you, your attorney witnessed it and made notation, and you're of substantial progress because the attorney now is ready to give you direction and help you out. If you don't have an attorney with you, I would begin in the car by flipping open the computer and typing everything you know about what happened. The questions asked, the questions answered, concern raised, how you addressed them, or your opinion about how the interview went wrong, anything that you thought wasn't right about the interview, just write it down. And I would call the attorney next day. You may attorney want you to maybe convert it to an affidavit and notarize it immediately, because the notary will lock the date of the statement, which will be very close in time to the interview time, which will create a lot of credibility to this document. A year, 2, 3, 4 years from now, if the situation extends to that time, and then discuss it with your attorney, and oftentimes we resolve those issues.
Yeah. And issues can manifest in the form of RFE. We just discussed it's possible to get handed an RFE there on the spot. Not an unpleasant experience. I mean, typically they will be pretty frank with you, and they say, your birth certificate looks weird to me. I need X or Y or Z to approve the case. And That's good communication, you know?
Yep. And if you are truthful with your attorney and you're truthful with the government, you should have no surprises. Now, I'm not saying you may not have difficulties, like if there's a criminal problem or a birth certificate that's not well documented that you have to overcome, but there would be no surprises. You will walk in knowing that you have to overcome an issue. You have to present something. The problem is if you were not clear on your forms, you're not clear with your attorneys, and you walk in and you hope that things will not be revealed, then it's a problem because you've signed under oath, and then they usually focus on that issue, which obviously...
Yeah, I mean, just for the record, they do background checks when you file for I-45, and, you know, if they don't feel like they can issue you an RFE, it says, we are aware that you had a criminal issue in city, state, whatever, please give us the records, you know, and...
If there's a problem, the officer is going to do exactly what I asked you to do in the car. The officer is going to sit right after the interview and write down questions he asked and answer you wrote or you responded to and concern he felt, and he will create a 4 or 5 page document and make it part of the record. Yeah. So you need to make your statements also part of your record to deal with that. And we've had to go down and deal with those issues, documents and letters written by officers that died. That's happened so much in the past, and we had to dig them out and find them and argue against them and present our evidence.
Yeah,
they become critical.
And preparing for this, you know, we were talking at the high level, like, well, the government keeps records too. You know, they record this and they keep it. Don't rely upon the government to keep the record for you.
A record that's favorable to you, at least.
Yeah.
Especially if the officer did not like something about your application and you felt that maybe...
We have found in the past that the government can remember things significantly differently than you do.
And they remember how they asked the question completely different than you understood the question to be. Yeah. And that's really where it comes down to. And
you know, that's I mean, as an attorney being an interview, that's the sort of thing where you know, the role, believe me, when you come into an interview as an attorney, the officer doesn't want to speak to you. They want to hear from the person who they've brought in to interview. But, you know, sometimes I can spot it and say, whoa, I don't think you guys are speaking the same language, you know? And that's really where I feel good after I've been in an interview like that.
Right. So that's that. Is there anything else on the one talk? So those are the...
that's what we wanted to talk about on interviews.
So the big issue, so were there any questions asked or anybody
we have questions for sure. That's just...
Yeah, let's see here. Okay. So we got some questions.
So when filing Supplement J, do you recommend including the medical documents along with it, even though I've not received the medical RFE yet? I am current since the June visa bulletin from Pune. Yes,
I would recommend doing that. So
Supplement J is a best case scenario for submitting your medical exams out of time. You know, in theory, they can. What does the policy say? It says that we accept medical exams at the time of filing, in an RFE, or at the time of interview. It is possible they will accept them, and you know what? Where you're sending, they expect Supplement J's from people. That's part of policy that you send those in. So, and that goes directly in your I-45 file. It's really hard to think that they would maliciously not take your medical exams at that time. There's always a little bit of risk.
Yeah. Well, what is the risk?
You
lose $400.
Yeah.
What's the big deal?
Yeah.
I mean, the bottom line is you want to get your case be ready for approval. And to get your case be ready for approval in an environment where the government is so slow in processing cases, the question is benefit risk, right?
Yeah.
What's my benefit? Case is approved, I'm going to get my green card, or is it going to get stuck for another year or two, or God knows how long, or risk, lose the medical and have to redo it again.
Yeah, Pune, in a sort of a follow-up on his question there, says, you know, my goal is to be documentarily qualified. And give them everything you can. If you want to give yourself the best chance of getting your case adjudicated as soon as possible, give them no obstacle.
Yes. To be 100% ready, and documentarily qualified is a State Department term that's used for being ready. And they also recognize that the medical can be stale and they'll accept it at the last minute. But honestly, I mean, what are the chances of losing that medical or it being stale, meaning that they will not act on it within 2 years? I'd say 40, 50%, 30%. I don't know. There is a reasonable possibility, but if I were you, I would definitely pay the money and let it roll. Forget about it. I'm not gonna talk about trying to save $300 or $400 and get stuck for 4 years or 5 years.
How many times you're going to apply for green card? You know.
So and that's something that I want to talk about. So the State Department released their last video last week. I think it was falling on the new holiday, and they pushed it. And then finally, they talked about the July visa bulletin. And there was really interesting numbers. We knew the numbers, but let's go over them one more time just to get everybody on the same page. So confirmed, the State Department, obviously, we know that every year the government issued 140 to 150,000 green card in the employment-based category. This year, because of COVID, there's 100,000 green cards or 110,000 green cards that were unutilized by the State Department. The consulates were shifted to USCIS. USCIS, under a good year, they would like to process 140 to 150,000. The truth is, also they fail short of that consistently to meet that obligation. Now they have 100,000 to 110,000 adjustments to do more, okay, in a year that is a pandemic year, in which that they are also having problems keeping employees healthy and keeping their offices open. And he confirmed that he believed that a substantial majority of these green cards may be wasted. And there is a lot of frustration in the community about that. Furthermore, he stated that next year he expects 290,000 green cards to be available in the employment-based area, of which probably 100 to 150,000 would go to the EB2 and EB3 India, but for the government probably next year also may not be able to get to them, which will be a total waste of time and money. It will be a couple 100,000 adjustments potentially filed and not acted upon, and then now we relive 2007 again, where people lived for 10 years on EADs and delayed their green card, delayed their citizenship, benefits children can receive, and grants and scholarships because they're not citizen, stability in their life, in their business, which I always, try to look into the positive of things in any situation. I think that's my personality. Some people get irritated by me when I look at it, but it's a frustrating situation. But trying to kind of analyze this, to begin with, this 100,000, 110,000 green cards, if there's somebody who should complain, it's really the family. It's the brother and sister in the Philippines that are backed up to 2002 or 2003?
Something ridiculous, but yeah,
20
it's like
years
20
back,
years, yeah.
Those guys got robbed.
Yeah, they robbed an entire year's worth of allocation of green cards.
Many years. It could have moved many years.
Well, but still, even the EB2, EB3 adjustments in the United States, they're getting robbed. The silver lining for this, though, is, people are very concerned. They want to get their green card. Everybody wants to get their green card documentary qualified and visa allocated and ready to go before those visas are wasted. But, they're going to have a new batch of them available in the new fiscal year,
Yeah, but that's 100,000 lost.
Well, yeah, but I'm thinking about the person who already has their adjustment filed,
Adjustment file is a situation that is not exactly the most stable.
I would agree with that, but there's people who their adjustments are pending, and they haven't gotten their approval yet. Reasonable belief that maybe in the next year, fine, if I didn't get it this year and they waste all those visas, I might get one in the next year. What's really it's the people who haven't. There's people thinking the visa bulletin is going to move forward a ton, right? And
they may not move. They may not even file for adjustment. So some people are getting their adjustment filed. other people are not able to file their adjustment because of that.
Those people should be. I mean, the people who have their adjustments filed are in a better spot than those who don't have their adjustments filed.
But the people at the State Department that failed to do their job at the consulates, okay, COVID maybe couldn't. I'm not going to say failed. That probably is a harsh word. Could not.
They
do
were
their job.
closed down. Yeah.
They closed down. These people really are the people who lost their visas.
Yeah.
The families.
Yeah.
Right. So obviously litigation is not a solution.
You can't sue the.
And if everybody talks immigration, the last issue anybody wants to talk about is legal immigration. And everybody is consumed by the illegal immigration problem at the border, the 80, 90, 100,000, whatever that number may be, crossing the border illegally every month now, that needs to be controlled. So Congress's appetite to get involved and resolve those issues is not there.
Yeah.
And
Sam, all it takes is both houses of Congress to agree on something,
but this could be a non-controversial issue that Congress can pass a legislation that says, let's revive all lost green cards in the last 5 years and put them back in the pot. I mean, it's a very simple solution.
I mean, no, I hate it. I mean, I've always had a beef over the H-1B visa cap, where they say they, are supposed to take 85,000. I don't believe they properly allocate all those every year. And this one's even more egregious. It's 100,000.
And I don't think Congress. I mean, I haven't researched this carefully, but we were talking about this a little earlier. I did not think Congress, when they said if you don't use these visas for the year, you cannot push them to the next year. The law, I don't think, was contemplating this.
Yeah, you can't really take this to court because the Department of State. But I mean, tell that to a judge. So, you missed out on the green card. How? Well, the government they sat on everybody's cases and they just didn't get to them, and then all the visas went away. Pretty sympathetic case if you could ever get in front of anybody.
Well, there's all kind of problems with it. Obviously, adjustment status is discretionary.
Yeah.
Remember, we talked about the original filing is at the State Department. At the embassies, and then they've created the adjustment status in 1952 as an exception.
Yeah.
And they created a discretionary process. So even if you're applying for consular processing at the consulate, you really cannot sue, or your ability to sue is very limited because it's a political question.
Yeah.
You can't sue the State Department. You can't sue the president sitting outside the United States.
People. One of my favorite immigration facts is the Department of State at the consulate abroad. They're just pretty much invincible. You can't, ever try to contact one of those guys? You can't argue with them. You can't fight with them. They have broad discretion, and they're a part of the executive branch, and they're outside the country. They're outside the jurisdiction of.
Right, and anything they do is part of the political question, which is political question is not something that you can take to court. So is going to court an option? Potentially, but I think. And I don't think you can change things in the next 2 to 3 months. You can try. You can lobby your congressman. But I think there has to be an organization. There has to be an organized approach to this. I'm going to call my congressman. You're going to call your congressman, and they're going to get letters. And I think there has to be an organized approach. I think the media has to know about this. We can definitely get this organized and get. What would be? You'll be surprised, in my opinion. A great outlet to talk to them right now is Fox News. They want to talk about everything about this president or this administration that's not going well. Go to Fox News and say, can you believe that this administration is wasting 100,000 green cards for immigrants who came here legally? They'd probably love to jump on it. CNN.
Legal.
Forbes.com. All these news outlets can probably get some momentum going to get Congress to act on it. But let's take some questions.
Yeah. Also, send your questions.
Oh, here's another thing I learned. It was very interesting.
I want more questions, Sam. I want to make my pitch for questions. Give me some questions. I love questions. It's fun for us.
But this is something that kind of blew me away when I was listening, and I want to go back and listen to the game because I listened to it one time. So people were asking why the EB3 moving so quick, and the EB2 is not moving, and all these numbers of EB3s. That have been filed recently. It's a large number of EB3s.
That's a question I'm asking.
Yeah.
A lot.
Well, I think I may have the answer.
Yeah.
Yes. The State Department will not consider any EB3 filed unless it is approved. So if USCIS,
raise your hand if you have a pending I-140 EB3 downgrade there, audience.
He's made note that we were informed that there's a large number of EB3 filed. He was saying, Mr. Oppenheim, yes, but he said I don't have visibility on that, and he said we would not count an EB3 and take, if the case was an I-140 EB2, it remains an I-140 EB2 on his counting charts until the I-140 EB3 is approved, and then he will remove it, and then he will open a spot in the EB2. And if USCIS is not approving them for 8 months, guess what? The EB2 is not going to be considered to move as quick as it should have.
If they ever eventually get to it though. Oof.
I know, it's crazy. And I wrote this down. I was like, "Are you kidding me?"
I mean, but how does the? I mean, you may have heard this, but how do they even track? So if they have somebody approved in EB2 and EB3, do they just double allocate the visa two visas for that person, or what?
No, not allocated. Every visa allocated by an A number.
Yeah.
So if we have an I-140 EB2,
you have one A number.
You have one A number. So they will remove one from the EB2 and allocate one for the EB3 after the I-140 EB3 is approved, not before. So if you have a pending I-140 in the EB3 category, that is still counted, and not approved is still counted in the EB2, and they're not going to move these numbers because your I-140 EB3 is not approved yet.
What, so they're keeping track of whatever your most recent I-140 filing is what you're gathering?
Approval.
Okay. Oh, yeah, approval.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. All right, let's take questions.
Yes. Let's see what we got. We answered that one. There we are from Raj. Will there be any use if I raise one more service request? First one was created on May 27th with no update until now for the EB3 I-140 downgrade pending from October 21st, 2020. Service requests, well, actually, you may not be able to put in another service request. They have sort of limitations in their system. It's very possible that your employer or attorney can put in a service request and basically be told, we won't take another service request.
And you as an employee cannot raise a service request.
Yeah. So that's the kind of limitation you hit. It is possible to escalate these things within USCIS. For example, the ombudsman is a classic example. But how long the ombudsmans are backed up about 6 months in terms of getting to issues. So you are kind of it's a tough spot to be in. Granted,
pre-and processing upgrade if the employer supports it.
Yeah, they do get to these cases eventually. I mean, we're seeing I-140 EB3 downgrades come in approved. Moving on to that next one.
My priority date is EB2, May 2016. It is suggested to apply for EB3 now and also make its premium to be prepared for the October 2021, or wait until October 21 to become current and then do the downgrade. Without a question, downgrade now and be prepared. I am convinced that downgrading now is money well spent. Do not wait, because it's going to take several months. And with this talk about wasting green cards, you want to be documentarily ready. So yes.
One thing that's worried that crawls into my mind, and maybe tell me if I'm crazy. Do you not think there's potentially going to be a glut of people upgrading to premium processing on EB3s in September and October?
This is an agency that is starved for money.
Ooh, they
almost shut down last year, and Congress would not give them the money, and they're raising fees, and also lost a lawsuit on raising fees. They're desperate. They will keep the premium processing open. They will take your money. They'll premium process you. Money is a great motivator, and they need the money.
It is a lot of money right now that they're charging for premium processing.
But you need to get it. You need to get in, because you need to be ready, because if they're not processing enough green cards, you just cannot just
make yourself.
You just got to be proactive.
You only do it once. Make yourself documentarily ready as best you can.
I mean, with the statement that a large number of these will not be used is ridiculous. I mean, it's not his fault, Mr. Oppenheim. I have great respect for him, honestly. I think he's a straight shooter.
It's exactly the word I was going to use. I always appreciate. I mean, transparency from the Department of State is awesome.
It's wonderful. Well, we've never seen that from USCIS. I'd like them to do a video stream, YouTube stream, or I think in this case, Zoom stream.
We get nice questions, Sam. Imagine the questions they would get. Ooh.
Yeah. Yep. see what next one we got here.
From here in. So if I change my job after my I-140 is approved, will I be asked the reason in the I-45 interview? So
if you've changed your job,
well, I'm presumably talking about using taking advantage of your I-45 EAD. You after 180 days, you're allowed to use that EAD. That's what the rules are there for. They will. I mean, what the bigger concerns is? You're allowed to change your job. The big concern for me is have you moved into the right job? You know,
I'm going to make it
similar.
I'm going to make it simple. No. If you did it legally, it's not their business.
Yeah. Yeah.
They will not ask you why you changed your job because you changed your job for personal reasons, as long as you're following the law. And speaking of changing jobs, next week presentation, depending on, I don't think the visa bulletin will be released by next week, but we're going to talk about termination of employment during the green card process or changing employment during the green card process. I think we have a blog, by the way, that has a chart that outlines about 12 or 13 scenarios. If you lost your job or
it's a fun one.
Yeah. If you're terminated, for example, when the perm is pending, after his perm is pending, after the I-140 is filed.
What happens to my green card
and
process?
The impact after the I-140 is approved, before the I-45 is filed.
Yeah.
After 180 days of this, of the I-140, but before the 180 days of the I-45.
Yeah.
And the one that generates a lot of question, after the 180 days of the I-485, but before 180 days of the I-140 downgrade. And that's the one that's going to, everybody's going nuts with that one a little bit.
Which is so many pending I-140s right now.
So we have a blog. If you go to our website, immigrationvisaattorney.com, and look for, I think, termination of employment during green card processing or something. And it has great, and we can talk about it. We're going to bring it out and address all those questions.
Yeah. I'm going to move down the list here. Just a nice thank you. Here we are. Online status shows my I-45 case was approved.
Whoa, congratulations.
Yeah, what to expect next? Expect a big party at your house.
Send us a present, or if you're a client, please, or we will be accept an invitation to the party. But this is great news. What's next?
I mean, case was approved. Eventually, they usually issue. So online tracking from USCIS is now 100% reliable. So the next couple notices you can expect to see are card is in production and something along the lines of card issued. And they'll have basically say your card is issued, and I believe they'll give you the USPS tracking information on it. Wait for the card to receive.
But he'll receive a 9797 that says welcome to the United States.
You'll receive a welcome notice, and we'll receive, or whoever your attorney is will receive one as well.
And we'll typically scan and email you a copy that we've received.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Get green card in hand, have party, be permanent resident.
Are you trying to tease everybody with that question?
Yeah, I know, right?
Yep. Next question. Suppose I move to EAD with employer and get RFE for original birth certificate during green card interview. Is my EAD still valid to travel an original birth certificate? My priority is June 7, 2013. So if you have a change employer, I'm assuming supplement J, filed timely, but you had a glitch with the birth certificate, and you're asking what would happen if I go to an interview and then there's a problem with the birth certificate. Well, it all depends on the problem. If the problem, most birth certificate problems are resolvable.
I find that usually those birth certificate issues come right after you file the adjustment. They look at the case and send those birth certificate RFEs. It's been a long time since I've been at an interview and somebody started pulling apart a birth certificate.
I've had that happen in interviews.
Yeah, I have too, but it's just been a while.
Yeah, but normally if there's an interview and there's an attorney with you, we'll review all the files and trying to anticipate the issue. But but the question is, what would happen? Can I travel? Maybe you want to go back home and dig out some documents. Yeah, you can travel. You can ask the officer to give you the maximum time. Usually they give you 87 days to respond to that RFE. Your EAD is valid. Your advanced parole is valid. You can leave
make sure your EAD is an advanced parole. It'll say endorsed for I-5102, I-512, I think it is, advanced parole on the bottom. if it is in fact for advanced parole. I would hate to come to the customs checkpoint and hand over my EAD and find out it's just an EAD. Ooh.
Right. Obviously, yes.
Yeah.
That would be probably you need an H-1B to get
I can't help
As a
it.
matter of fact, that would have been an abandonment of your
Ooh.
green card if you've
Yeah.
left the country without a valid advance. So
Anyway,
is my EAD still valid? My EAD/AP still valid? The answer is yes, remains
Yeah.
valid.
Yeah.
All right, let's take Vinay, the next one here. Let's say I do an EB3 downgrade, and but my EB2 becomes current first instead of EB3 downgrade becoming current. Should I do anything additional processing in this case? Well, that's the ultimate nightmare scenario for interfiling.
Yeah.
And the question
Pretty
is,
common one right now.
Yeah. The question is, do you do an interfiling because you have an EB3 downgrade? You can do an interfiling because the I-140 does not have to be approved to interfile back to EB2, or do you wait?
Or premium. I mean, I presume this scenario, the EB3 downgrade is still in process. I-140 is still pending. Upgrade to premium processing. There, you could file a new adjustment in the EB2 category, but that's a big undertaking.
I would so obviously this is a let's say question.
Yeah.
So it hasn't happened to you, because when it happens to you, there's more details. My job is stable. What's the priority date for the EB2? What's the priority date for the EB3? What's the visa bulletin date? How close it is? That all drives the decision.
And kids, if you have kids subject to the Child Status Protection Act, jumping between categories might hurt.
So there's a lot of things drive into giving you the answer specific to your case. But generally, the options is one of three. Potentially, there's a fourth one. Interfile, premium processing upgrade. Premium processing upgrade first, if no children. Interfile, back to EB2, file another adjustment of status. And then we always talk about, is this a supplement J question or not? Let's say EB3 downgrade, but my EB2 becomes current. I'm assuming the same employer.
Yeah.
So there's no supplement J question. Yeah. So let's talk to Raj. If I change my job, after EB3 I-140 downgrade, but submitting it for 485J, and when dates become current, can I go back to my previous employer who filed green card, or is it okay to stay with a new employer? So if you change your job after your EB3 I-140 downgrade, so you downgraded, then you did supplement J.
I'm gonna make this question. I'm gonna do something that I never do. I'm gonna make this question simpler. It's if I properly change jobs using supplement J, do I have to go back to my original employer?
It doesn't matter whether he downgraded or not. But he has a downgrade that's pending I-140, and then he did the supplement J, which has to require 180-day wait, because once you do an interfiling, and this is something very important, you can't do a supplement J on an interfiling, and because the 180-day resets for the I-485.
Yeah.
And obviously you need the I-140.
You got to be approved. Yeah.
So the question is, hopefully your attorney filed your 485 after 180 days, okay? But let's assume he does. Can he go back to the previous employer? It seems to me he may need another supplement J.
Changes. I mean, yeah.
So you might need another supplement J because the government think that you're working with employment B now. You want to go back to employer A. So there could be a supplement J filing again.
Yeah.
All right, sounds good. So
that supplement J, by you sending that to the government, you tell them that I'm changing my permanent employer, and I could see.
Sounds like you change it back. It sounds like to me a potential adjustment interview issue with supplement J going back and forth. Now you have to show. What would you show? You had a supplement J to employment B, and then you have a supplement J back to employment A, and all of a sudden USCIS say, "What the heck is going on here? We're confused." Interview. So what do you advise, and what document would you advise the client to bring, or the client to bring to the interview?
Well, I mean, it really depends on what was. I mean, clearly, if you filed that supplement J the first time, that supplement J represents the change of your intended permanent employment, and I mean, ultimately, you would have to. I'd say I want to document that something changed with employer one that caused me to leave the first time, and something that brought me back.
You don't have to have the reason. You don't have to give them a reason why you changed. You changed because the sun it was rosy and sunny one day, and it rained the other day. You don't have to give them a reason.
You don't have to give them a reason.
But you have to give them paycheck stubs, communication showing that the change is bona fide.
A sense of document that for the time when I gave you this supplement J, I was intending that other employer to be my permanent employer, and now I filed the supplement J. I'm back on board with these guys. They're my permanent employer.
Yeah,
sure.
So paperwork to show communication and what happened, trying to explain it.
Yeah.
Sounds good. All right. So do we have another question?
We have questions.
All right. Let's go to the next one. Follow on my last question, Mr. Butterready. Follow on my last question. If EB3 premium is approved, and surprisingly EB2 becomes current, will I be able to apply for alpha under EB2? Yes. 100%.
They are perfectly happy to have you with two pending adjustment of statuses based upon the EB2 and EB3, and you can just sit back and watch them race one another, and you'll get a green card for whatever one they can. I mean, that's what we talk about sometimes. If you want to make yourself documentarily qualified, do it in 2 cases,
Charlie won't be happy with you because the way he counts numbers, now he's confused. Does he count you on this category or he counts you on the other one? But love Charlie. I don't care.
Yeah.
It's a good solution for you.
I want to give my...
I want my green card.
I want 2 chumps at the bid instead of 1. Thank you, sir.
For losing 100,000 freaking green card this year, I'm filing 5 adjustments of status on 5 cases because I won the first one.
Sort it out, Charlie.
Yes. So, yes, absolutely you can.
Yeah. Got another question. So, can I and my spouse travel to the home country with a valid H-1B while my I-45 and I-765 are still show pending?
Portability are in your 485 beyond the I-94 date.
I'm sorry?
So I'm adding a little bit more to this question.
Okay, all right.
So now it's beyond the I-94 date.
Beyond your H-1B approval notice.
Yeah, and then they filed a timely filed H-1B petition, and then they leave the country. And then this H-1B petition is pending. The answer is simple. I wouldn't do it. Now, it could be perfectly okay, but I wouldn't do it. Why? Because if this H-1B is denied by a mistake for a silly reason, no H-1B.
You're talking about a pending H-1B. I wouldn't travel on a pending H-1B.
Well, he has an I-485.
Yeah.
So if the H-1B is denied, the I-485 is abandoned.
Yeah.
And therefore, I wouldn't take that risk because if the H-1B is approved, it normally is approved back to the date of the I-94 expiration. So it will show you have continuously had a H-1B status, and it's perfectly okay. But why take the risk?
Yeah, I mean, I would also note that if you have a pending, along with your I-45 and I-75, the pending advanced parole, they will consider that advanced parole abandoned. It's not like when you leave the country, you can't, just wait abroad for your they won't send you your advanced parole to you when you're abroad, and you can't have a friend pick it up because they'll issue a noir or RFE and deny the AP.
Right, but the I-765 is not abandoned.
Yeah.
And the I-45 is not abandoned because you had a valid H-1B, assuming that the H-1B will be approved. But if your H-1B is not approved, then your I-485 and I-765 also abandoned. And that's a very difficult situation. Yeah. Obviously, it's not the end of the world because you can go back and get an H-1B, go to the consulate, get a stamping, come to the United States, your I-140 is valid, refile your I-485, assuming the priority date is current at the time you make it back to the U.S., and you're back in the same position you were in, but it's a major headache.
I feel obliged to mention that traveling, depending on where your home country is, it's kind of a problem right now. India, the entire European Union Schengen travel area, Iran, Brazil.
Unless you quarantine for 14 days in Mexico, in Cancun, and have a great time enjoying yourself, and then come to the U.S. A lot of people are doing that, but be aware of that.
Yeah, there's that travel ban.
Let's take next question here.
Okay. There we are.
My I-485 biometrics was done on March 15, 2021. All right, so it's been a while. After that, I have not received my EAD AP card, and now my final action date is current since June 1st. Okay, what should I expect, EAD or green card? Well, let me tell you what I would like for you to expect: a green card. Now, the green card and the EAD will continue on parallel path. The one will not interfere with the other. And it is very possible that one day you'll receive the EAD and the next day you'll get the green card. And it's also very possible that you may get both of them on the same day, but the likelihood of that happening is a lot less mathematically. But it is very difficult to anticipate. But looking at the date, so I don't know the date you filed the EAD, the green card, the adjustment status, because if you get fingerprint on March, so I'm thinking 4 months before that, maybe, or 6 months before that. So it's a year to 16 months to adjudicate an adjustment right now. So probably EAD.
Yeah, longer than that. In some they quote you based upon the local service center. That's in theory. Then, well, yeah, a long time.
Most likely EAD.
I mean, with this scenario, I question, well, what's the status of your I-140? What I-140 is this based upon? If your I-140 is not approved, don't expect to see your green card until the I-140 is approved.
So 75% green EAD, 25% green card, 75% green EAD, 25% green card.
Yeah.
If the I-140 is not approved, 90% EAD.
Yeah.
95% EAD.
I have talked to people who have gotten their green card approved before their green card their EAD/AP receipt.
Yes, so. which is great for them, right?
Well, I'm sure they would have liked to have that EAD/AP while the green card was pending.
Yes, true. I got my EAD with EB3 downgrade. All right, wonderful. I'm a 40 approved. Congratulations. If I move from California to Texas, do I need to file for a new labor? Let's see here. Well, is your it all depends. Number one, it all depends on how the labor certification is drafted. Yeah. So a labor certification, some labor certifications are location specific.
Yeah.
Other labor certifications are drafted to have a national flexibility in them. So that is the answer to that question.
Yeah.
Yep. Depending on how your perm labor certification is drafted, obviously you need to talk to your employer about that.
Yeah, I mean, most employers, plan for this based upon the kind of, worker you are. They think thoughtfully about this when it comes time to do labor certification.
Yes. All right.
So
running out of time, but a couple more questions. For interfiling, do we have to be with the same employer? Well, so you have an I-140 and an I-485.
Well, it's employer A, yeah.
Well, you have to, because you have to have an I-140 also on the labor certification.
Well, yeah. I mean, ultimately, by interfiling, you're saying I'm switching the I-140 is your ticket to a green card in the United States. If you're jumping from your EB3 with employer A to your EB2 with employer B, you got to be saying.
What's the short answer? Yes or no? Yes or no?
Yes.
I would say not necessarily.
Well, I was explaining that.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah,
but let me talk here. No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
You are, by interfiling and saying, I'm attaching my I-45 to this other I-140, you're saying that's going to be my intended permanent employer. So you don't have to be with the same employer, but you have to want to be with that old employer.
So employer
or the other employer, rather.
Employer A has a perm labor certification. EB2, I-140 filed and approved. And then you file an adjustment of status.
Mm-hmm.
Then you move on and you file supplement J to employment B.
You've changed the facts, but okay.
Why?
Okay. Oh, yeah. So it's.
I haven't changed the facts.
Oh, it's not an interfiling.
Well, I'm not done. I'm not done yet. All right. So file supplement J. Now he's an EB2 supplement J with employment B.
Okay.
All right.
With employee. Okay. So 180 days passed from with A. He uses supplement J to join.
Then he filed a new labor certification, an EB3, with employment 2, second employer, employer B.
Yeah.
And filed an I-140.
Sam, I don't think anybody's going to be able to follow this scenario. I can barely follow it.
Then filed an I-140 in EB3. So he have a perm I-140 employment, an EB2, perm I-140.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, you've created a scenario where you can do interfiling in interfiling, but you're with the same employer, but you don't have the original I-140. Your original adjustment was not filed with that. Okay.
So possibly, most likely, it's with the same employer. In certain cases, it could be with two different employers. But I think the specifics, I mean, the question was answered very general question. I'm giving you a general answer, possible, but most of the cases are done with interfiling with the...
Yeah, I can see this scenario is impossible, but in order to lay this out for everybody, I think we need like a whiteboard behind us with like, you know...
That's a good... If you guys like to have a whiteboard here, and we can add a whiteboard and start writing things, send me thumbs up on that, and we can maybe include that.
They would get to see attorney handwriting, what it looks like, Sam. Terrible.
Well, why not? But charts and writing, that'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I do like...
Yeah, I like that. I think it'll be very dynamic.
Take a question or two more here.
Yeah,
maybe?
sure. Bring it on.
So
it's for you.
Okay. If my EB3 is current and I'm upgrading to premium processing for I-140 EB3 downgrade, will they approve my I-45 along with my I-140 as it is current?
First of all, it's not a I-140 EB3 downgrade. But I think what he's saying...
It all depends on who filed it, you know?
He said, if my EB3 is current.
Okay.
I think if my EB2, if I am an EB2 and the EB3 priority date is current.
I'm reading this as I have a pending EB3 I-140 and my EB3 priority date's current. Basically, if I upgrade my EB3 to premium processing, will they approve my I-45 when they approve my I-140?
Good. Go ahead and answer. I like the reading of it.
Not necessarily, but here's what I can tell you. Your I-140 not being approved is an impediment to the approval of the I-45. They have to approve the I-140 first. So we're talking about getting your case documentally qualified, removing all obstacles to approval, getting your pending I-1. If you're relying upon the I-140 to get your adjustment, everybody is. You need to have that I-140 approved before they're going to approve it.
All right. So 702. Let's take one more.
Okay. It's find a good one. Let's try this one.
You're welcome, sir. It's always our pleasure. On October 2021, let's say, I like the let's say questions because they are open-ended. Let's say my date becomes current as a pre-filing date and I apply for 485, and after a few months, filing date goes back and my date is not current anymore. What happened to my green card?
Oh.
Well, obviously, so if per
is this a retrogression question?
Yeah, it becomes so. There's no retrogression this year. They're keeping say, you know, one of the things and we're going to beyond 7 o'clock, but we'll talk a few more minutes. One of the things I kind of got a feeling from Charles Oppenheim that he doesn't feel that it's going to be great movement. Then he talks. He's kind of talking from. He's not sure. He's not sure.
That's what I was kind of stuck on. It was. Okay, if so many people applied, and there's the big glut of visas that became available last October, and everybody applied, but they're going to waste all the visa numbers practically because they can't approve them all. How the heck is it going to move forward a great leap in October if they still have all those cases pending and those guys haven't gotten visas?
Well, because they're counting on the 290,000 next year, so it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. He's counting what he has. He has a chart. He's doing the math. He's not gonna figure out.
That's his job. I suppose I have to trust
supply and demand.
Yeah.
It's supply and demand. You know what's supply, what's in demand, right? What's available, how many visas I have, how many people in every month. If I move it 2 months, how many people would apply? But given the fact that 100,000 are not going to get adjudicated, or 50,000, whatever that number may be, are not going to be adjudicated, he doesn't have a big problem. There's no way USCIS is going to over-allocate the visas and give more visas and break the law.
Yeah.
So he doesn't have to worry about it too much. Back to the question. So we're going to read it one more time. We're sorry we digressed. So on October 2021, let's say that my date became current, okay, as per filing date. So now, as you understand, filing date is not a visa availability date.
Yeah.
This is kind of an 8 to 12 months before they think that your visa will be available, okay? But it's current per filing date, and then you apply for the 485, and after a few months, filing date goes back, which will not happen this year, by the way. And my date is not current anymore. What happened to my green card? Well, to begin with, the filing date is not the date there's a visa available for you, but that's really not relevant too much to answering the question. What happened is that's called retrogression. When visa retrogresses, that means they've received enough number or they approved enough green cards and they would like to hold back the cases in the pipeline. So that file gets closed down, they shut it, they put it back in the shelf, and they bring it back when the final action date is current, not the filing date, because the filing date doesn't do anything in terms of handing out green card. And then they'll review it one more time. That can be 6 months later. That can be 3 years later. Could be 5 years later. And then they will open it, and then they're going to give you a long RFE to update all your information. And hopefully during that time, you've had 1 or 2 supplement J's and so forth. But that's the answer to the question.
What happens? I mean, what happens to the green card case? Well,
the file, there's no green card.
Well, there's no green card, but there's benefits. I got to mention, there's benefits that come with it. Your I-45 is still considered depending, meaning a pending I-45 means you're allowed to stay in the United States while it's pending, and you're still eligible for all those good benefits, the EAD and advanced parole. And when last time the big 2007, they made pretty much everybody current. And then everybody filed, and then they said, "Oh my God!" And they rolled everything back. Retrogression. There were people with pending adjustments for about 10 years, and they were just, in addition to being able to maintain their non-immigrant status, they had EADs and APs, which they got for years.
Yes. Absolutely. Excellent point. Now, with regard to this year, and if we're going to have this wastage of visas, it's going to be a big question. So everybody's comparing it to 2007. Well, 2007, the State Department made everything current and showed this USCIS how to do things right. But in 2007, the Department of State was not complicit in creating the problem. In 2021, whether it's somebody's fault or not, the State Department is complicit. They've created, it is the State Department's problem that was created.
By closing down the consulates abroad, no more family-based interviews, says we have a pile of visas sitting on our table. I guess we'll send those back to USCIS. They'll get them used next year.
And don't expect the State Department to get tough with USCIS by dumping on them 100,000 green cards with a short notice. So that's not going to happen. Nothing's going to be current. They're going to be very gentle with USCIS. They're going to bend backward to accommodate them. And that's the reality on the ground. Next week, we're going to talk about termination of employment during the green card process. And also, we're going to talk about if we go into this prolonged adjustment of status pending for many years. I mean, if they fail and they only give out of the 100,000, let's say 20 or 30,000, they moved it 3 years only. Every year, usually you get 10,000. Now you're getting 20 or 30,000 instead of 100,000. And they do the same thing next year. There's going to be a lot of people who are going to file adjustment of status and they go nowhere. So they're going to have adjustment status, they're going to have EADs. And there's all kind of option for these people under Supplement J. We're going to talk about them. Self-employment is a great one.
Also, I mean, like for them all to have a green card, but it's not better having a pending adjustment status retrogress versus, or just not processed versus having no pending adjustment status at all.
Yes, change or termination of employment during the green card process. I think unless the visa bulletin comes out, we will combine them.
We're going to go back to Monday, be here on next Monday, and I definitely don't think it's going to be out by then.
Correct. Yeah. Yes, or maybe we'll come back on Wednesday.
I know. I like the idea of maybe a special presentation for the visa bulletin if we can swing it.
I like the idea too. All right, guys. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.